axis talks about increasing commerce, and the x-axis talks about time. So you will find that there is an innovation starter. Today morning we had a very interesting presentation by Manning, who said these are the pioneers. So you have an innovation starter, but the innovation starter really doesn't make any dent into the system, because long before this innovation can take and span and come forward within this 20 years, you need a lot of systems to be brought in before it's industrially applicable. So he brought a second definition called a foundation patent. And then he said that the foundation patent is actually supported by a substrata of incremental patents. And he was talking about blowing life into this incremental patent and making this foundational, and hence drive economy. So we call this as the curve of chasms. A chasm is essentially an abyssal crevasse, normally used in the field of mountains. A chasm is a deep divide into which you could fall and possibly never get up. So in every technology, as it goes through this adaptation cycle, before it hits obsoleteness, remember these days an engineering technology's obsoleteness is maximum about 6, 8, 10. Beyond 10, there's nothing possible. So as we climb through this, the mountain of chasms, you hit zone A, then you hit up a critical chasm. This is very evident in certain technologies which could finally be like our mobile phone or any of these things. So the innovation starter, although promised a lot of things, you find that as you implement it, you have to go through these chasms, and you cannot cross these chasms until somebody comes with a foundation patent from an incrementally life-blown incremental patent. This is a fundamental need to move technology up the commercial axis of growth. No innovation in the last 20 years has violated this curve. So this is a curve called the technology adaptation curve. And commercial success of the IBMs, the Apples, the Samsungs, and all these people in this world business have hit it only in the zone B. And very little is talked about how you got to zone B through all these chasms in zone A. This is the fundamental nature, and whoever is working in an Indian company, it doesn't matter where you are working in this world technologies, this curve cannot be violated. This is one of the absolute truths in technology. Now, what I have done is, it's very difficult to generalize this the way I have done. So to prove this point, I have taken a very specific case of the development of the hard disk drive, which is today ubiquitous in the market. You know, everybody knows what's a hard disk drive. And if you follow this hard disk drive through its technology growth, through the chasms, the pioneering patent was from IBM, which was called the Ramac, and that patent was in 1970. And you move up in speed and size. That's the main mantra of the drive. The engineering and inventions were only driving this up in speed and size. And by 1998, we had what is called an 8-inch Piccolo drive, which was protected by an EP patent. Now, the drive business reached about $18 billion in 1995, and that was when the 5/4-inch drive was again an IBM invention protected by an EP patent. If you now look at those patents and study the differences, you will find that the basic concept has remained the same, but there is somebody who is sitting in the IBM lab who churns up an incremental patent, blows energy into this patent, blows life into it, makes it a foundation, and the drive metamorphs into what's useful to the computer industry. Then came the class of standardization patents we were talking about again in the morning. So up to this point of time, nothing was standardized. Each company was using its proprietary drive interface mechanisms. And in the 1993, you had a patent which was standardized called the XII hard disk drive. And that was one of the places where the chasm of speed was crossed. So that is one of the areas where we can clearly see that if you had not crossed this chasm of speed, there is no way this hard disk drive could have become ubiquitous into the computer market. Then by 2003, IBM realized that this business is becoming too competitive. They sold the whole business to Hitachi, and Hitachi took it there and pumped more efforts into the incremental energy and incremental life into these patents. And then by 2007, the global business was $38 billion. And it was Hitachi, which finally drove through the hermetic drive, and all the drives we have today are essentially those class of drives. Now, if you look at this whole development and trace it back to who participated in this, there were 129 participants in this business to enter with, and by the time you came to the 2012 37 billion market, this number had gone down to 20. So the rest of the people in this business were either acquired or they simply wound up because they had no access to get their incremental patents. Even if they had blown life into these patents as foundation patents, they could not get into the market because the market was held by a selected few who understood how to market this whole stuff. Now, this is the scenario in which every product in the technology industry moves. So you have to subscribe to the scenario and figure out where we are with respect to the companies who are running the Indian-oriented companies. Now, peculiarly, so you almost came to a last slide conclusion that it looks like the hard disk drive is a very mature product. But if you go back to our search engines and try and locate how many patents have been filed between November 2013, 2 months ago, to yesterday, January 2014, in 3 months you had 50 patents that were filed in the hard disk drive. So you see here that although you are talking as if that the commoner thinks that the hard disk drive has reached the ultimate speed and size, but you still have people working on the incremental thing and trying to make it better and better. So here you have a clear case that there is no end to a technology-driven business because the necessary science to support you is in place, and what we need is new technology and an interface to the global access to this technology. Now comes a very specific slide. I think this is known all over this patent analysis, patent drafting, patent litigation. Okay. It's called the zone of obviousness. Okay. So if you take most of these patents and then grade the claims and see how the claims have been enabled in the specification section, you should be able to see 3 separate thresholds. The thresholds below which this patent cannot cross the problem of a prior art. There's no invention. It's a novelty hit. Then you have the second threshold, which we call as a threshold of obviousness. Anything below the threshold of obviousness is an invention step hit. Even if you get this through, it's very easy to say that this patent cannot see its life cycle. And there are patents which cross this threshold, and patent attorneys world over, in support of inventors, just let go patents which cross this threshold of obviousness. And in the right extreme end, we have what is called as a disruptive technology, just about talked about in the previous session. And if you value patents from the zone of obviousness, critical obviousness, to the zone of disruptive technology, the value of a patent goes exponentially up. So the farther you are towards the disruptive technology, the more is the value of the patent. But we already saw in a few slides that to take this value and really make money out of this, you need a handle to the link who can take this incremental or a foundation patent down to the business level. So if you come to a careful analysis of all these conditions, you have to come to 3 axioms, which I call as the 3 key points, which the Indian company, I'm talking about the Indian company minus the MNCs. First, independent of the patent you have created, do you have a realistic link to the encompassing technology and the contemporary ecosystem of that technology? So you could invent anything which you believe is making something faster, but you have to identify what is this something, where does it rest, who are controlling this commerce of this something. That's the first axiom. The second, when you now go and turn a value up to this, you will have to now figure out how far are you from the obviousness threshold. The farther you are from the obviousness threshold, the more value you have. So this is where the key issue of analysis of your patent by real experts come. The inventor always thinks that what he has invented is of great value, because the human mind is like that. You think you are always right. Okay? It is somebody else who has to step in who says that what you have done is good science, but good science necessarily does not become a good patent. This is the key statement here. So the Indian industry has learned how to practice good science. You make your cars, the ambassadors have been replaced, the Fiats have been replaced, you make your Marutis, you make good things there, you don't have your refrigerators failing, it's generally improving, good science, but the question is you are still not in the patenting group of applying this good science. The third point here, are you doing it in reasonable time? Technology is obsolete 6 to 8 years from their invention. So when you now say that I've got this invention made, I'm trying to find a market to this, I need to find a link to the technology enablers and the commerce enablers, can I get this done within reasonable time? Because as you reach the end points of the reasonable time, the value simply goes down because there is another technology which has stepped in. Now, if these 3 points, if you now take it and then make this as the acid test to most of the patents that come out on this, it will be an interesting thing that I've already done this. I've analyzed about 300 Indian patents filed by Indian companies. And as a matter of fact, even these days, I advise inventors that what you are now told me is good science, but it doesn't cross the obsolescence threshold. I let go certain for these inventors because I do know internally that this is just crossing the obviousness, and the moment it goes to the controller, you had it. There's a likely chance that you're going to see that this patent is not going to see daylight. So these 3 axioms have to be understood by this industry that is essentially Indian in nature. Okay. Now, 3 possible causes can come. Okay, if you have the axioms, what's the state of the Indian industry? Why is it that we are making only 3% contribution to this stuff? Now, most of Indian research is focused on innovations. Question. It's very difficult to answer this question, but most likely answer is yes. Okay. So this explains the case that you're always close to the obviousness problem, and when you take it to either your own inside company boss or you take it to the lawyer, you will find that it's going to be turned down and said, good work, sorry boy, come back next time with a better invention. That's one of the possibilities. The second point is that there is a lack of knowledge in many of the SMEs on what is patentable. Now this afflicts many of SMEs in India who contribute to science and technology. They are part of a huge network of ancillary builders. Many of technologies are built, but unfortunately there's a lack of knowledge in this whole affair. And this lack of knowledge can only be corrected with time. So it's only with time that you can see that you will be making a product which can climb the mountain of the chasm that we talked about in technology adoption. And we have to here hope that the SMEs can get through this problem. So now you have a situation where, what can you now do? So you are now saying that it's technology oriented. Your invention has to be incremental and life pumped into it to make it foundational. But unfortunately, your invention is part of a technology grid, and you don't have a handle to this technology grid and commerce and so henceforth possible. So every company has to really look for what is it that he has in his portfolio, do's and don'ts. Don't try to work in areas which are not easily accessible to you because of the links to the technology. Await and wait and evaluate your IPs on a regular basis, because you will find that some of these IPs are totally valueless because there's a technology shift on the global market. Then, if you have understood that there is an adjacency to your patent, you need to go after and acquire some certain successful IPs which will back you up backwards into the technology area, and you should be ready to let go patents which are no more of value. Now, this is fine talk, and in the analysis I have made, I have found there's only one Indian company which seems to be doing this, and that's the Tatas. Tata Motors has 833 patents which are well within this one, and Tata Steel is about 1,333 patents, all held closely within this technology. There doesn't seem to be any other thing as far as I know. Maybe you could point out if you know some of these things. This is the nature of this. So what we now have is a situation where an SME or an Indian manufacturer makes the patent, there seems to be inherent value in this patent, but he has no access to the global market. There, I believe James steps in. His methodology of asking for a place where these patents which are valuable but not can be ascertained has to go into a repository with somebody who then understands the market as it is on one hand, and he understands the value of the patent on the second hand, and then he tries to build a bridge between these two. Otherwise, these patents are valuable work. Some people have spent a lot of time and money on this. Valuable work down the drain because you didn't find an enabler. I think if James at the end of this topic can find it, it's a very good analysis we can do. Thank you.